Hello there, everybody, and welcome to episode 21 of my team career mode, the second last round of the first season. As you can see, the gap to AlphaTauri is 10 points heading into the final two rounds. We did pretty well in Mexico, a track where I found quite a bit of pace, and we ended up finishing in fourth. Basically, everything went our way in that race, so be sure to check that one out. As we head now over to Brazil, and I elected to do the drift event for the Pirelli Hot Lap event, and actually quite a fun track to drift down, albeit it is quite a tight circuit in terms of track width, but nonetheless good fun to chuck the car around a little bit, and actually quite easy really to get the drift score. Even for me, someone who is not particularly amazing at drifting, just generally, and in this game. But yeah, had a bit of fun chucking the Ferrari around. Don't know how happy our engine supplier of Mercedes will be that we are driving these cars around, but not a factory team, so I can kind of do whatever the hell I want, I guess. And yeah, it's been pretty clean and tidy so far. The second sector, actually, with the undulation and the general flow, actually pretty fun to chuck it around, and yeah, it did not take me long at all to get well over that 6,000 point drift score needed, and yeah, still plenty of time remaining, but that will obviously be more than enough, as we actually did a whole nother full lap around, and yeah, got the job done, and that will be full cash and acclaim. And we're going to head straight into qualifying now, where we're going to be looking to drift around as less as we can, or the least amount of possible, and this will be our one and only flying lap of this session, as I was juggling around some power unit components and had to fit those. So we need to ensure that this is clean and tidy, and with a 10-point margin to AlphaTauri, we are going to be pushing as hard as we possibly can, because if we leave it all to the final race, then that's going to make the math very much against us in a car which we're lucky to get finishes in towards the top 5, even if everything goes our way. So we've kept it pretty tidy so far here in Q1 so far, as we try and floor it heading up to turn 12 as we enter the final sector of the lap. Very quick lap here in, I believe it's Sao Paulo. Could be getting my geography wrong there, but we'll see what the time will be as we use DRS all the way up to the line, and it will be position 11. So actually finding some pretty good pace here so far, and that gives us confidence heading into Q2, where we are currently position 16, but looking to improve. And because we have that extra set of tyres, we can be a little bit more aggressive here in this particular session. And on lap 2, where we're up on the Delta, I believe. In fact, that may have been our first lap. I can't entirely remember. But it is good enough for position 10. I know that for sure. And now heading on to the end of the session, we're going to look to try and improve, expecting to be knocked out of the top 10 here. So we'll need to see an improvement, I can only assume, to head us in to Q3, unless we get really lucky. So we're going to fire it in now to turn 1, and we're already way down on the Delta, where it didn't feel like our line was particularly off, so I don't know exactly what's happened there, and we're losing a lot of time on the straight, and that'd be why I forgot to bump ERS back in to hot lap, and that means we've already lost way too much time that we can't recover. So big mistake made by us, but we managed to just sneak through. The gap to Bottas, only 0.02 of a second, and we will survive into Q3. So it looks like our luck at the moment just is on a bit of a roll. And hopefully we don't use it all up before the actual race. Heading into Q3 though, and I think our pace is going to be pretty far off heading into this session, but we don't really have much to lose. We'll send it on this last set of soft compound tyres and give it our best shot. Remembering this time to put our ERS into hot lap as we fire it in through corner 4 into the left-hander of 5. We'll try and chuck it in aggressively here in the second sector. Can't afford a major mistake, but at the same time, probably not expecting to do better than 10th anyway, so we'll just have to see how we go, just hugging the curb on the run up the hill now, as qualifying will officially complete. So the session will conclude for us when we cross the line. And so far, it's actually looked like a pretty neat and tidy lap. Struggling for grip a little bit there on the run up to 12. But we managed to kiss the curb nicely on the inside. Get a good run now onto the main straight. I guess if you want to call it straight. Activating DRS, hugging the left-hand side of the wall for the shortest run to the line. But it's only good enough for position 10. Which is a little bit disappointing. But we jump onto the formation lap now for the sprint. Probably should have mentioned that before. This is a sprint format weekend. So we still have an opportunity to try and improve our starting position. But given our race pace is sometimes a little bit poor, there's also a chance that we start to go backwards a little bit here. But on to the start of the race now, straight into it. The lights go out and our start initially not too great. A kick, a wheel spin, but we still maintain position as Alonso squeezes us on the inside. Doesn't give us any room. I think we may have been 3 wide there through the first couple of corners. Nonetheless, though, we end out on top now, position 9. A very pacey Verstappen up ahead in the Red Bull. If we can contend with him, I'd be incredibly surprised. The 2 McLarens ahead as well have found a lot of pace in the back end of this season, so probably 2 more cars that we're not realistically going to be able to contest with unless there's some sort of safety car throughout the race, or through the sprint rather. There's not going to be any changeable weather, so we can't rely on that. And perhaps this will be a race about just maintaining position, because Alonso looks quite pacey behind. Magnussen, even in the Haas, could also be quite deadly. So I think we're just going to have to be very careful. This sprint has, I guess, the opportunity for us to lose the weekend here. We're definitely not going to win, and we're unlikely to get a point or 2 in the top 8. So it's all about being conservative and smart and not making any big mistakes as we come to the end of the first lap. We fast forward onto lap 7 because not really much has happened. Well, not much has really happened. Verstappen has way blown out that gap now to about 7 seconds, but we'll hold that thought as Bottas getting aggressive now and heading into the first corner. We look to send it back down the inside. We hold position. We make a little bit of contact. I think I was just ahead at the apex there, but Bottas still wanting to sort of close us out like Alonso did on the opening lap. We maintain that position though, and we're still in P9. I don't think we got any damage, so we will survive. Those cars behind there looking very pacey at the moment. And we move on to the end of lap 8 for Bottas to have yet another opportunity to overtake. This time it's a lot cleaner. Gets us at the final corner of turn 15, and we can't really mount much of a defense heading back into the first corner, but we can set him up for the first DRS zone on this lap if our exit's good enough. But unfortunately we just lose the rear end a little bit, and we were struggling for grip through turn 3 a lot during the weekend. If we were just a little bit too aggressive, as we go side by side now with Ocon, forced off the track a little bit to avoid contact, and now the run up to the tight turn 7, managed to keep it in one piece. Bottas though looks like he will extend that gap though, so we're back in position 10 for what would be the rest of the sprint, heading on to the final lap. Ocon pacey behind, Guan Yu Zhou as well, and you can see on the minimap a bit of a train is forming. We're also having to conserve fuel. It's very borderline at the moment as to whether or not we'll make it. George Russell wins the sprint, so he'll start on pole for the Grand Prix, and we're just looking to get a very safe, consistent run out of this final corner. The fuel mix, as you can see, very close as to how much we have remaining, using every little bit of overtake we have as well. We actually enter low fuel mode as we cross the line, but we will just edge out the Alpine for position 10 in Sunday's race.
Welcome along then to where heroes and history are made. It's where the 2008 title was decided in the very final corner. And just 1 year later, Jenson Button stormed through from 14th on the grid to claim his one and only Drivers' Championship. It's time then for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It's an unusual anti-clockwise race here at Interlagos, where the Sao Paulo locals are packed into the grandstands at each of the 15 corners around this classic 2.7-mile circuit. Two very fast sections bookend the famous and highly technical Sector 2, where getting a good run out of Junsao into one of the two DRS zones will be key to any overtaking prospects today. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. George Russell will begin today's event in pole position, edging out Sergio Perez, who lines up P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Leclerc, Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz, and Bottas. Mir, Verstappen, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Ocon and Sebastian Vettel. Mick Schumacher, Norris, Guan Yu Zhou, and Latifi. Gasly, they've taken a grid penalty. Fernando Alonso, Jack Aitken, and Alex Albon. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Stroll, Tsunoda, Hamilton, and Kevin Magnussen fills the last spot on the grid. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Here we are then on the grid for the Brazilian Grand Prix, and we need every single point possible. Quick look at the top of the screen though, variable conditions at the end of this race, rain all but guaranteed. And that could help us if we play our cards right, but it could also hinder us if our card is not good in the wet. Either way though, with penalties, we have been elevated into position 7. And if we can just chip away at that 10-point margin by 3, 4, 5 points, that would be very, very large heading in to the final Grand Prix at Abu Dhabi, and just alleviate a little bit of pressure towards that $8 million sponsor bonus. We can't be thinking about that at the forefront of our minds, however. All focus now on getting a good start in this race. Bottas in 6, I'm really eyeing him off on this first lap to see if we get up into position 6 at least. As the lights extinguish, we get a decent start. In fact, it's actually very good. The initial jump against Bottas, much better, and we get a good run heading into the first corner. Forced around the outside as the leaders check up. And we avoid contact, fortunately, and it actually is favourable. A warning for collision with Ricciardo. Didn't even feel that at the time. That's position 5 through the first 3 corners. Very happy with that, and we maintain it into turn 4. Sainz, Leclerc up ahead in the Ferraris. They're going to be way faster than us. But the beauty of Brazil is we're not going to be under too much threat through this second sector, especially early on where we have a little bit of pace. Russell may hold up the Ferraris a little bit. In fact, that gap hasn't extended out all that far onto the second lap. Only about 1.5 seconds, as I think contact there was made again with Ricciardo into turn 1. Fortunately for us, no damage, and I don't think I was really in the wrong there. Perhaps a bit of an ambitious move there from the Aussie. As we now go side by side, I think he may have lost a bit of his front end plate, his front right, as we mount the curb and just keep it on the track. Verstappen's going to be very pacey behind him in the Red Bull. And it's all about us just ensuring we don't get swamped throughout this race and just keeping it clean and consistent, especially until that rain hits, because that's what's going to throw strategy a little bit out the window in what should be an otherwise one-stop race. Lap 6 now, overcast the conditions. You can see up in the sky that rain very much looming, as we are actually looming ourselves onto Norris, whose pace has dropped off a little bit. We're in position 7 now, so those fast cars around us getting the jump. But we have a gap behind us, Ocon 1.5 seconds, so he's out of DRS range. And I'm starting to feel like we might be able to collect a decent handful of points in this race to aid our efforts. Does look like Norris, though, might just be out of reach. We'll see how much time we can maybe gain here on the start-finish line, but doesn't look like it will be much onto lap 10 now. The gap in about 3.5 seconds, and as you can see, the conditions now changing as we go off the course and do a bit of a lawnmower on the inside of turn 11. These conditions changing quite quickly, and the grip levels dropping off dramatically. Ocon flies past. The engineer telling us the rain's going to continue to get heavier, but the slicks are still the fastest compound. At least they were. It just feels like the conditions now are just too bad. So we're going to send it in onto the intermediate compound, I presume. We'll wait and see what the stop is like from the team. I see other teams coming in, though, with intermediates in hand. So it would seem we've made the right call, and perhaps we've been able to undercut some of the cars up ahead. It's a 2.9 second stop from the team. So well done again by them as we almost understeer into the pit exit. That would not have been good. We nonetheless need a good, clean, quick exit lap here. Lap 16 of 36, so 21 laps remaining in the race. And we are the first of the 22 cars to come in for the intermediate tyre, I believe. And initial reports would be that the grip levels are okay.
We're getting some strange readings from a couple of the sensors. I don't think you need to be worried, just some bad data. So keep doing what you're doing. I'll let you know if we notice any genuine
strange readings, the team is telling me on the sensors. So fingers crossed that is actually just a sensor failure. We're not actually going to have an engine failure in this race, because that would be an absolute disaster. We've only had, I believe, one mechanical failure all year, so props to Mercedes for giving me a good power unit package, but if it flounders now, it would be a disaster, as the sky is still some sun to be seen. So perhaps this rain is only going to continue to get worse. Maybe even the conditions could get better, but the engineer has told me a few times now that it will in fact worsen, so I'm going to trust his word for now, and we're just going to persist forward. If we eventually need to transition onto full wets, well, so be it. At the moment, in these intermediate conditions, the car feels fine for us to just cruise in 7th place, and that's exactly what we've done. But onto lap 30, as you can see, the rain has intensified, so much more standing water on the track, and we are being very careful, very cautious at the moment. There is absolutely no grip on offer, and I'm starting to get very, initially worried, but quickly that turns into frustration, because the AI were ridiculously fast in these conditions. I was having to drive around like I was on ice. These conditions at this point, they're basically full wet. The Inter could not tread enough water, and if I just did the tiniest over-aggression with the throttle, as you can see, like, it was just going to kick out sideways, yet the AI are driving around like it's just intermediate conditions, easily getting past the track. Vettel found heaps of time on that gap behind me, and now I'm starting to get maybe even worried that we're going to drop out of the points here. Now, it's not long to go in the race, so we should be able to hold on, and we do actually defend there against Vettel. So perhaps I'm getting a little bit too worried, a little bit too early here, but things are starting to look a little bit scary. The conditions are awful. Really, really difficult to drive on, and these are clearly not the right tyres, but of course we can't pit for wets if the rest of the field doesn't, because we'll simply lose too much time. I don't think with 5-6 laps to go we can find back the gap we'll lose in transit, and then getting those wets up to temperature, that'll probably be about a 30 or so plus second loss, I think. So to find that back is going to be near impossible, as Vettel down the inside actually makes contact. We take some underbody damage, which is going to just slow us down even more, especially in some of the low-speed sections. As we go now onto lap 32, Alonso, Schumacher, both swamping us, and Vettel as well, threatening. We just have no grip, no drive, and that's us into, I was going to say position 10, but it's 9 for now, but unfortunately we go wide. Just no confidence to really let the car do its thing. And yeah, that's position 10 now on lap 32, and I am really, really annoyed at this point because the AI, again, just have an unrealistic amount of grip. I wasn't driving amazing, but I just simply had nothing to work with. And it didn't seem like they had really reached the crossover point, which was just so frustrating. And what is only 4 or 5 laps to go now feels like it's another 30 laps to go, as we are just so slow to the rest of the competition. And Guan Yu Zhou is only 3/10 behind and may well snatch the final points paying position, and he does. Easy as that. Again, there's nothing to work with. On the exit of turn 12, the grip is awful, and even on the run through this third sector, we can't even go full throttle in 7th gear. These are full wet conditions, and Guan Yu Zhou has just gapped us by 2 seconds on a straight. Very frustrating. But there's nothing we can really do about it. We just need to keep on pushing and hope that something will happen. Maybe the AI will pit onto wets and we can try and jump them on the inters or something crazy, but it seems like they're just going to weather the storm. No one wants to be the first to go in and pit, which makes perfect sense. And on lap 35, our woes have only continued. Position 15 now, and Gasly in the AlphaTauri is probably going to jump us here. We also got lapped as Sergio Perez takes the checkered flag. Gasly just whizzes past. There is nothing we can do. And this has been one of the most frustrating and disappointing results of the year. When we needed points, we won't get any. Nada. Position 18. We're not even going to bother looking at the podium after that race. I was just so frustrated. And as you can see, of course, constructor standings still 10 points behind. The big positive was AlphaTauri didn't get any points themselves, and it sets us up for an epic finale at Abu Dhabi.